And this is one of the reasons why our property is increasing in value and in rent so fast, because we're taking such good care of it, and word is actually getting around. Even when I was talking to
there's like a waiting list, isn't there?
The manager, we have a waiting list to get in there. And when I was talking to the manager there, she was like, the reputation that you guys have in the building is like stellar at this point, because you're actively taking care of so much shit and fixing all of the issues. Okay, so in North Miami, we have a special assessment coming up. And what a special assessment is when a homeowners association determines what needs to be done in the building in terms of mostly repairs. And they'll have certain things where so I've been a part of a board of a condo association for like 7 years, and I was a president for like 4. So we would determine what needs to be done, and if there's any additions that we want to, say you want to put in a pool, or if there's like more amenities, or something wants to get rehabbed, or we, for example, one of the big ones that we had was like a lobby rehab in the building. So that was like, I don't know that if we special assess for that or we simply increase common fees. I don't remember exactly. But
other common things might be like a parking garage or like railings.
Well, so this one that's coming up is like structural. So there's structural in the parking garage. There's structural, the roofs need to be redone, and also balconies need to be refurbished. So these are big expenses. So I had a call while I was away. I was actually in the Dominican for the last 4 days. I had a call with who is she? She is, I don't know what her technical title is. But she essentially is like almost like a liaison. She's like a manager, I guess, of the properties. She's like the home. Yeah, I guess she'd be like a building manager. She kind of keeps all the checks and balances.
Not a property manager.
She's not a property manager. She kind of keeps the checks and balances of the property, right? So,
does she live on site?
No, I don't believe so. So she called me back. I called her like a while ago, and I was like, "Hey, her name's Maggie," and I was like, "I want to know what's going on, right? We don't really actually know yet exactly." So we had some initial bids come back in between the range of like $10,000 to $15,000 a unit, and our property manager is kind of like, "What are you guys doing for reserves? For the investment that What are you guys doing for reserves for the property?" You guys don't have any, there's no cash reserves on the condo association, which is actually more common than you'd think in the States. And the reason why it's more common in the States is because banks actually like to lend to homeowner associations or condo corps. The reason why they like to lend is because as soon as there's some sort of lending scenario happening for something like this, they actually move into, I don't know if the technical term would be for this scenario, in first position over all of the other loans in the building. But I'm pretty sure that that's what ends up happening is if shit actually hits the fan in terms of like a financing perspective, the bank that lent to the condo corp gets paid out first versus, say, for example, like us or whatever, or the bank that lent us the money for Bayview Palms, if that makes sense. You get what I mean? Like the condo corp loan gets paid back first versus the mortgage on, like, say, our property. So the banks like it, and everybody's getting common fees coming in. So there's this perpetual income coming in if shit actually hits the fan. The banks know that they're going to get paid back. And if they don't get, and if somebody is delinquent, they lien the property. It's a very easy process for banks to get repaid when this happens. So, that doesn't happen in Canada. Canada doesn't actually, from my perspective of being on the board of a condo association, it was difficult for us, even though our financials were great, we had $1 million in the bank, in reserves, banks still didn't like lending to condo corps over here. I don't know why. I don't remember exactly why. Nonetheless, they don't. In the States, completely different story. It might be because they take precedence over everybody else. I don't know. Now, very good news is that the homeowner association or the condo corp is actually going for a loan, and it's going to be amortized over a certain amount of years. And we are cash flowing so heavy on Bayview Palms now with the increases in rent, the 30% increases, 35, 40% in some cases increase in rent, that we're going to more than likely actually overshoot even the income or the returns that we've communicated to investors, given nothing else goes on or we don't have other big expenses or whatever the case is. But we're going to be able to,
like in future years.
Yeah, we're going to be able to service the debt for this special assessment, no problem. Now, getting to why special assessments are actually a positive when really people look at them as a negative is because, and I'll give you my thoughts on why this is a positive, specifically pertaining to Bayview Palms. Number one, we got a great deal on Bayview Palms, okay? And one of the reasons why was because the previous sellers probably had a feeling that there was a looming special assessment and she was not going to be able to pay for it. But she probably didn't realize that it's more than likely going to be financed by the condo corp. See what I'm saying? So that's number one. Number two, buyers don't like not knowing what a special assessment is going to be. So, and that's understandable. I can understand that, right? So I didn't know particularly that there was a special assessment coming, but given the age of certain things,
you kind of saw it coming.
I didn't know if it was going to happen in our term, the 5-year term of holding this property, but within 1 to 10 years, it was happening.
Right.
The reason why I'm not worried about this particular special assessment is because when it comes time at disposition for this particular property, it's going to be in our advantage to be selling, having the special assessment already completed. Because once these things are done, always the biggest special assessments are, structural shit, this is what's happening on this one. It's certain areas, not all of them.
Yeah, probably roof.
The roof, so structural, roof, and balconies all the time. These are the fucking 3 biggest ones, okay? All of the ACs are individual, so that's not a problem. Not a big deal.
What about like windows?
Windows are also a big one too. That I haven't heard anything about that.
Because windows aren't individual. Obviously, if one window is leaking, but if you need to actually replace all the windows in the building, like that would be an HOA fee, wouldn't it?
It would be more than yeah. So I don't know exactly how this HOA runs. I don't remember if that would be a capital improvement on the HOA or on the individual condos themselves. I believe on this one it would be the individual condos themselves. But again, the reason why I'm not worried about this is because when it comes time to disposition and sellers look at the condo association documents and they're going to see this already being done, it's already being serviced. Here's the rate of returns on this. It's actually, we've managed the property successfully. The income in the property is dramatically increased. It's not going to be a problem. If anything, it's going to be looked at as a positive when we go to sell it, because there's not going to be this like looming unknown expense coming where it's going to scare off potential investors when we actually have to sell, if that makes sense. And even how do I know this? I know this from being part of an HOA or part of the board of directors of an HOA and president for 4 years of one. And I know the mentality of people when they walk through the door and they see this shit. I've also sold a bunch of my property in that particular building, and that's one of the first things that come up. Roof, parking structure, balconies, it's always that kind of shit. And if that stuff's already taken care of and you have like huge life on it now and they don't have to worry about it, it's a huge fucking plus. And not only that, you have to look at it from the perspective of, hey, if this was a regular building, well then it would have to get done anyways. Right. Right. So it's not really that big of a deal. And more than likely we're going to be in a more favorable position because the HOA is getting lending, and banks like lending to HOAs versus you owning your own property. Having to do this as a value add is probably not going to be as strong a debt. So it's actually not a negative. I'm looking at it as a positive because we're rehabbing the property as a whole, making it better. And when it's time for disposition, there's going to be that much less, barriers for somebody to come in and pay top dollar for this property.
So how this even might relate to somebody investing into either single family homes or individual condos, let's say themselves, is like if you were to go in on a single family home and you have to replace the roof, like don't look at that as a negative, because that's a big capex expense that will then increase the value of the property because it's over and done with.
It does
for the next buyer.
Yeah, it doesn't have the biggest punch. A really nice kitchen. That's not like I'm not.
Yeah.
That's an obvious, right? The biggest punch that you can get for the biggest bang for your buck that you can get is like kitchens and bathrooms, right? So that's not what's happening here, but it will play a major factor in selling when it comes time to sell the property. Regardless if we're selling it as a package, we're selling it as in individual tranches, like 4 to 5 units at a time, or we're selling individual units to individual home owners to maximize value. So those things will be looked at. And that's one of the first things that lawyers tell people to look at is, I want to see the condo docs. And that will tell a story. And that's one of the main things that they look at is, what's the current condition of the common areas of the property, because the current condition of the common areas of the property will dictate whether or not a special assessment is coming. Or they'll look at, when was the last one done? And if the last one was done within, a couple of years of us disposing of the property and selling it, that's a huge positive, right? Especially where the market is headed on this property and the rents and everything, it's massive. So I'm actually not looking at this as a negative. Of course, if everything was a perfect world, we wouldn't even have to do a special assessment. But at the end of the day, the properties it was built in the 70s.
We look for value add properties.
It was a value add property, and
you have to do things to it.
Exactly, you have to do things to it.
Not turnkey
and exactly, and this is one of the reasons why our property is increasing in value and in rent so fast, because we're taking such good care of it, and word is actually getting around. Even when I was talking to
there's like a waiting list, isn't there?
The manager, we have a waiting list to get in there. And when I was talking to the manager there, she was like, the reputation that you guys have in the building is like stellar at this point, because you're actively taking care of so much shit and fixing all of the issues, in the first year. And this is why, you saw different amounts coming in for distributions, because we were handling things like record time to get those rents up, so that moving forward, we're going to be able to service the debt for the special assessment. And then number 2, we're going to be able to hit those targets for year 2. So that's what we're doing.
Great.